Okay. All right.
That
Thanks.
picture we like to put it in place. Take
Okay.
care. God
He'll
bless.
give you a card
Very good.
where you can give it.
Joy. Joy. Joy.
Okay. I'm working this way. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. I'm sorry, I was trying to get through the bill. I was trying to make my way over here. I wanted to see you. I'm sorry. Hi, Boyd Rutherford. I wanted to see you. Yeah.
Brother, I love you. Okay. Hey, what's going on, man? Good, good. Come on, we're gonna get started. Hey, hey, how you doing, man? Raynard, man. Good to meet you. Appreciate you coming out, man. Hey, y'all hurry up, cause we're gonna get started now. Where are you going?
Grab some water.
Oh, yeah, okay. All righty. Yeah, we're going to start right now, because, oh, yeah, we got to get started, man, hell. Yeah. Man, yes. Excuse me, Maggie, let me borrow this from you, because I have to blow my nose.
Okay, go. I'll be right back. Okay, go ahead.
No. Okay. Okay. No, I do, or this one, or use this one? Okay. All right, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. Okay, you can. Let me get your attention. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me now? Getting better? Yeah, I'm like fine wine, huh? Getting better with age. For those who don't know me, I'm Raynard Jackson, and first of all, I want to say thank you guys for coming out during your lunch, because I know you all could be doing any number of things, not as fun as this, obviously, but I appreciate you all coming out. I am founder and chairman of Black Americans for a Brighter Future, and what we are a federally registered 527 Super PAC, is I guess the colloquial name for us, and we're the first Super PAC in the country set up specifically to get more blacks involved in the Republican Party. And our focus is strictly on the black entrepreneur. And it's amazing that a lot of folks in the party, they want to focus on other issues, but the black businessman is the gateway to the black community. And so I'm going to take about 5 minutes and talk a little bit about the vision for black Americans for a better future, as well as how you can get involved in what our vision and mission and goal is. And so I figured I call this, you know how every January, February, the president does his annual State of the Union. Well, this is going to be my annual state of black Republicans in the country. And we're going to do this every year, so this is the first one, so you all are making history being at the first one. And hopefully I'll be able to walk down the street with all these daggers in my back when I finish what I'm going to say. How many of you all are familiar with Winston Churchill? Okay, most of you all. The rest of you folks obviously went to Howard, but I digress. Winston Churchill and I had breakfast this morning. And he told me, to every man there comes a time in his life when he is figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a great and mighty work, unique to him and fitted to his talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared or unqualified for the moment that could be his finest hour. And right now, the Republican Party is being tapped on the shoulder, both figuratively and literally. And at this moment in time, I think they're totally unprepared and unqualified for the moment that could be his finest hour. It's the 21st century, year 2015, and I'm still trying to find black staffers on presidential campaigns. This is the 21st century. And I've had several conversations of late directly with some of our presidential candidates. And you all who read my columns that come out every week, I've been accused of being very controversial and very hard, and I don't think I'm controversial at all. If speaking the truth is controversial, then I guess I'm guilty. But I just find it amazing that here we are in the 21st century in year 2015, and I'm even having to have a conversation about where the black folks on these presidential campaigns. And I get criticized not only by leaders in the party, but even black Republicans. You would think they would have my back if nobody else would. But I'm going to say what I believe to be the truth, and it's paying off. And I'll get into that in a few seconds. And I'm going to speed through this because I'm going to bring the Lieutenant Governor up, who is the focus of why we're here. And he exemplifies everything that I think we in the party need to be about. But when I say hiring blacks for your staff, not only on the presidential level, but congressional staffs and other party committees, I don't mean hiring some 20-year-old who then calls me up and says, I want to pick your brain. Really? You're getting paid to do a job and I'm supposed to do it for you. And a lot of times Republicans will put a black in place for what I call race insurance. We can't be racist because we have a black on staff. I mean, I've been in meetings with members of Congress that I know, and I'm going there to talk about nuclear nonproliferation. They'll find a black receptionist to bring them into the meeting. Like, really? There's no purpose for that person being there. I understand what the member of Congress is trying to do, so they're not coming from a bad place, but you know, they don't get it. And I find it very offensive when they do that. And I've gone through that here as recently as last week. So they will hire a staffer who has no idea who someone like Allegra McCullough is sitting here, who worked for several Republican governors, worked for several Republican presidents. And you want to talk about small business issues? She was the regional administrator for the Small Business Administration, SBA. Do you realize under Obama, lending for black firms out of the SBA has gone from 8% under George W. Bush to 1.8%, and nobody's even talking about it. You see black Republicans on Fox News who they're entertainers. They have no political experience. They don't know who Allegra is. They don't know someone like a Shannon Reeves down in Alabama. They don't know Mike Gunning in California. They don't know Carvin Hagens up in Philadelphia. They don't know, I don't know either. I feel like Rick Perry. Oops. We have blacks, oh yeah, Sean Moss up in New York, who was the regional administrator. Yeah, Ron Langston. He was the head of MBDA, Minority Business Development Enterprise, out of the Commerce Department under George W. Bush. Obama has closed down all 6 regional offices. He slashed that budget to almost 0. This guy should be all over TV. Why are Republicans not using resources like Ron, Allegra, Shannon? So I was at the presidential debates last week, and I had several presidential candidates talk to me privately. We can't find black folks. I said, where do you find Biffy and Buffy? And I told them through Black Americans for a Better Future, that will no longer be the case. We know who these leaders are. We got people like Maggie Harris, one of the top business women in this Maryland region, good Republican. You would think someone would reach out to her. She's great at what she does, and I just think she's great. And Maggie's my buddy there. And so my point being, I'm really tired of Republicans telling me they can't find blacks, but somehow they can find Biffy and Buffy and Shane. And we got to do better. I mean, we have a great Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Boyd Rutherford, who you're talking about a guy that's razor sharp. He knows how to navigate the political process. He knows how to make government work. He knows how to make small business work. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes when I bring him up about what he's doing as Lieutenant Governor in Maryland to make things better for the small and minority business community there in Maryland. I mean, we got, and I'm zipping through this stuff, and you all know me. You know, I normally don't write things down, but I just got a few things I got to say, or I'll miss it. Do you know? Right, I'll offer anyone right now $1,000 in cash. Give me right now. Show me a list of black Republican staffers on the Hill right now. You know why? It doesn't exist. We got about 30 to 40 black staffers on the Hill. Nobody knows who they are. You know why? Because they want to be invisible. They don't want to be known. Somehow they think if they don't talk about being black when they walk in the room, no one's going to notice they're black. And do you realize that you have blacks who are in powerful, but I'm talking about staff directors and communications directors of major committees in the House and the Senate that nobody knows who they are? That's crazy. It's crazy. And so how do you build a party when you got black folks in the party that don't want to be black? And you got Fox providing a minstrel show atmosphere for black Republicans. They don't have any substantive blacks, or they have very few. And most of the blacks they have on there are hyperbolic. They want blacks on there that's going to talk about President Obama in personal terms. I disagree with almost everything that President Obama does on policy, but you're not getting me on TV talking about he's stupid, he's ignorant, I'm not going to say that. Now, I may say that when I'm at the backyard barbecue, but I'm not going to go on TV. And so my point is, the Republican Party has a brand problem, and we can have the best message in the world if the American people think our brand is so bad, the best message in the world Not going to deal with that. And so what we're going to do with Black Americans for a Better Future, we already have surrogates all over the country, in Georgia, Alabama, California, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. I've been going on a series of hosting dinner meetings with black entrepreneurs. I did a group a couple weeks ago, Black money managers on Wall Street. Most of them are Republicans. Even the Democrats said, I understand what you're trying to, I'm a big time Democrat, but I will support you because I think if you're focusing on business issues, I can get with you on that. We're not dealing with abortion and all. I'm strictly dealing with, I met with the CEO of a major deli sandwich, and if I told you the name, you would know, but I didn't get his permission to talk about it, so I won't name him. But he's a big Democrat. I mean, he's raised Obama tons of money. And he said, Obama's killing me. This whole issue of minimum wage, this whole issue of government regulations and OSHA, said it's killing my industry. I'm meeting this week, I'm flying out to LA and San Diego. I got friends of mine in the entertainment business in Hollywood, names you all would know, who are working with me. Even some are big-time Democrats, but they respect what I'm doing and know you can be Republican and black and not have to choose between one or the other. And that's the problem I see with the Republican Party. We got to stop arguing that, which are you, black or Republican? Well, you be both. But so we got a lot of internal things to do. And so what I need you guys to do, and I'm going to shut up at this point, is a couple things. If you all know of any black elected Republican officials from local mayor or all the way up, send me their name and address. So if we don't know who they are, I want to create a database of who these people are. If you know blacks across the country who are chairman or vice chair of their local party committee, county party committee, state party, we need to know. It's amazing. There's not a database for all this stuff. So we're going to reinvent the wheel. And then the last thing, if you all really think what we're doing, focusing on entrepreneurship, there's a way you all can help. Send in a check. And, I mean, we want you all to support us financially, and also we want to be able to use you as resources. When I get a call from CNN and they're doing a story about University of Missouri, where I'm from, St. Louis, Ferguson, if they need someone in the local community, that I want to have someone on the ground where I can tell CNN, hey, call our local representative from Americans for a Better Future, and they'll go on TV. Go to the black newspaper, hey, here's our guy on the ground there. Talk to them. And this is how you grow a party. So, again, when you walk away from here today, don't just walk away saying you had a good time looking at a pretty face. Figure out how you can help this pretty face become more useful within the party. And also, we got to help our people out. I mean, whether they're Democrat or Republican, guess what? What sense does it make to talk about prison justice reform, which I think most people agree with, and get these nonviolent offenders out of jail? Who's going to hire them? Corporate America's not going to hire them. Guess what? The entrepreneur will, because the entrepreneur knows your mama. The preacher said, I vouch for this guy. Yeah, he got sent to jail on some, he made a stupid choice. But if the preacher vouches for this kid getting out of jail, that entrepreneur in the community will take a second chance on him. Fortune 500 ain't taking a chance on you. Hell, if you can't get past a credit check, you're not getting a door. That's without going to jail. So what do you, and you have people like Rand Paul. How in the hell do you go to Howard University and lecture these black students about civil rights? How is that even remotely possible? And you had Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, which I respect her a lot. She gets up at the press club down the hall 2 months ago, talking about the South Carolina shooting, et cetera, and start talking about Jesse Jackson called her, and now they have a budding friendship. But yet she didn't mention one thing about one black Republican in South Carolina. You wonder why we can't build a party? You wonder why we can't? I was down in Florida last week, and I had the state party chair said, where are these black folks? We don't know who they are. Here's the state party chair. I said, I'll come back and I'll organize them for you. I will show you where they are. You got, but where's Sean Jackson here somewhere? Heck, he just did a nice event down. There are black Republicans all over the place, especially if you focus on the business side of the equation, you will get traction in the black community. So having said that, I'm going to bring up, and you all can take away the podium. I'm going to bring up a good friend of mine. Let me give you an insight as to why I think so much of the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. He called me a few months ago, out the blue. And he said, well, where you been? I haven't heard from you in a while. He said, you need to come by and see me. I said, Lieutenant Governor, I don't need anything. I live in Virginia. He said, what's that got to do with anything? I said, well, I think you probably got a lot of new friends now. I said, and I wanted to give you, I wanted to give you time to get kind of settled, because, he's only been in office a few months. And he said, yeah, I got a new acquaintances, but you are a friend. And that tells you the type of person this lieutenant governor is. And he's a local boy from D.C., went to USC, right? I got that right? And went to Howard Law School. So this is the guy that's, I twisted him. Okay, I twisted him around. And so this is the type of person boy Rutherford is. And so I'm going to bring up the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, and he's going to come up, and before we sit down, give him a hand. Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, Boyd Rutherford. Okay, they need to take this. And stay standing. And before we do that, I have a special treat for you. We have a good friend of mine who I think is one of the most talented artists on the scene today. And you want to talk about a person who's doing the music game the right way? She graduated from Temple University with a 3.8 in business and music. She's from Columbia, Maryland, Lieutenant Governor's home state. And she is one of the most delightful people you will ever want to meet in your life. And her vocal skills are second to none. And she's going to sing the national anthem before we start. But I have arranged with her to get each one of you her CD after the program is over. And she is just so talented, so I encourage you to go to her website, go sign up, friend her on Facebook. We need to promote this because she's doing it the right way. I often tell her that she's a lady, she's a woman because of her age when you hit 21. But she's a lady because of her behavior. And this is a true lady. Bria Marie, R&B hip-hop recording artist.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
Thank you, Bria. That was very beautiful. And again, we have CDs for you at the end of the program, so make sure you all get that. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for taking out of your schedule to come all the way into D.C. What we want to do, we're not going to get into any heavy policy discussion. I just wanted the Lieutenant Governor to come here, number one, because I wanted him to be introduced to a lot of the sharp entrepreneurs in the region here in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. He's just a great guy, very accessible, and they're trying to do some good things in Maryland, especially for the business community. Excuse me. And so let's talk a little bit first about you being born and raised here in D.C.
I was born and raised here in D.C.
And
Born and reared, as I actually.
we're going to have to get some ground rules laid here first. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, I mean, I know you got your security and stuff, but I knew you before now.
All right, all right.
And remember, I do the jokes, you all do the laughing.
All
Okay,
right,
let's stand on
okay,
that.
we'll do that.
No, but the Lieutenant Governor, he's got a very extensive political and government career. He worked in the law profession as well. But what I like about you a lot, man, you are one of the best administrators I've ever seen in my life as far as taking a huge organization, because he was the chief administrative officer of the RNC when Michael Steele was chairman. But every job he's had to manage huge bureaucracies. And this guy, if you want to reinvent government, this is the guy to go to. And I hope our next Republican president will utilize your skill set.
Well, we'll see. We'll see
And,
about that.
so tell us
I'm
about.
happy where I am.
Okay, right. Let's talk about that. You all have been in office since January.
January 22nd, we were sworn in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what about 2 months later? I think that Baltimore blew up.
Baltimore had riots in April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you and the Governor Hogan, you all got rave reviews on just how you handled things and how your administration prevented things from going even worse than they were.
Yeah.
Tell us how you managed to contain that and keep everybody at bay and still make government run.
Well, we kind of divided the responsibilities. And let me just step back for a moment. The governor and I decided, actually in the campaign, or really when he first asked me to run with him, on how we were going to manage the ship of state once we became elected. And we decided early on that we would run it more like a chief operating officer. My role, he's chief executive officer. We also decided, really leading up to the election and after the election, that we'd have a joint staff. Unlike previous lieutenant governors who've had 12 to 15 people on their staff, and the governor has a staff of 20, we said, no, we're going to have a joint staff. Now, there are a couple of people who are primarily assigned to work with me, but they can be pulled off for the governor. We have one chief of staff, one communications office that serves both of us. So, we were already working together. So when the riots hit in Baltimore, a lot of on the ground and working with law enforcement, the governor was going to take care of that while I continued to operate the state operations. He spent a lot more time in Baltimore. I spent time in Annapolis. For security purposes, our people wanted us to be separate. They didn't want us to be
equal.
together. Very equal.
Okay.
The new term, not the traditional view of that. But they wanted us to be apart geographically from each other. So I spend more time either in Annapolis or at the Emergency Management Center, which is in Baltimore County. But a lot of it was really just making decisions. And we think that what was happening in Baltimore was there was some paralysis going on in terms of decision making. And the governor was willing, in consultation with all of us, to make some critical decisions early on to get a handle on things in Baltimore, and it helped to calm things down.
Where do things stand now with Baltimore? It's gone away from the news as far as, but is there still things simmering?
Well, the first trial is to occur this month. I think the last week of the month is the first trial starts. That'll be jury selection. And we'll see how things play out from there. But, the challenges that are in Baltimore that led to the unrest that you saw have been in place for many years. Yeah. There's been a challenge in Baltimore, and I'll be partisan that the former governor, who was the mayor, implemented a version of a police aggressiveness with the city. I mean, in 1 year, the then mayor, O'Malley, locked up 100,000 people. 17% of the population was locked up in 1 year in Baltimore City. So and many of them were locked up without a charge. So they were released, but they were doing street sweeps. And this was at the direction of the then mayor. And so that created animosity. There's always going to be some friction, in certain communities, but that really exacerbated the animosity. And you have a city with a high percentage of people who are living below the poverty level, a terrible school system that hasn't been changed in years, and that's one of the things why the governor and our administration is pushing for charter schools, because we want to give people choices.
Yes.
The charter schools that are in place there, there's a backlog in terms of the amount of parents who want to get their kids in these charter schools because the traditional schools have failed their kids.
Right. Now, what is it, since we have a room full of entrepreneurs here, someone like a Maggie, who, like she told you earlier, she used to have her headquarters in Maryland. Are there any incentives that you all from the governor's office are issuing, say, in a depressed area like Baltimore City, where you're trying to give incentives for small businesses to locate there?
Well, that's being discussed now in terms of what policies we can do for certain areas like West Baltimore and East Baltimore, and other parts of the state, not just in Baltimore, but out on the Eastern Shore, Salisbury and Western Maryland, the Cumberland area is depressed too. So we're talking about what kind of policies we can implement that give incentives for investment and job creation in those areas. But what we've been doing over the last 10 months that we've been in office is really taking a stronger approach in terms of our regulations, the regulatory environment. You mentioned the entrepreneur with the sandwich shops. It's regulations that often stand in the way of job creation and make particularly the smaller businesses, because they don't have the resources to hire all the lawyers and the accountants and everyone, and particularly the lobbyists, to go down to Annapolis. And so when you increase these regulations to the point where it becomes a barrier to job growth, that's something that we're taking a close look at. So the governor initiated a regulatory review commission. It's going to be a 2-year process, which I am chairing part of that, where we're looking at all of our state regulations with the idea of what regulations are providing roadblocks or barriers to job growth and job creation. Right. Now, at the same time, we do want to protect those things that all Marylanders want to protect. We want a good environment, we want safe conditions, but the question is, we're in an Uber world now, and a lot of our regulations are based on bricks and mortar. Yeah. And so we have to address update those regulations to the point to see what's making sense. And
what is the IT environment in Maryland as far as IT firms? Do you all have any types of like incubator programs, or are a lot of IT companies looking at setting up satellite offices there in the state?
Well, a lot of what the state has in terms of just an infrastructure is the cybersecurity world. Because of Fort Meade and the cyber command is in Fort Meade, that has attracted a number of businesses that are doing that type of work. There are incubators with University of Maryland. Baltimore County has an incubator. There's one at College Park. There are a couple in Baltimore City. Our new Department of Commerce, used to be Department of Business and Economic Development, has programs that help in these areas as well. But cyber tends to be the one that has gotten a lot of focus over the last several years.
Yeah, I have several friends and clients who are in Maryland in that whole cyber security area, doing a lot of work at NSA.
Right.
And now, what about this? You mentioned school choice. Is that something that I think it would be a great opportunity, especially for black churches, to have this issue of school choice vouchers, to set it up on the model of the Catholic Church? I grew up at Baptist back in St. Louis, and my pastor set up a preschool through, I think, 8th grade right now, eventually trying to get to 12th grade. So is there a opportunity for specifically black churches there in Maryland, if you all get what you want on this issue of education and choice?
Well, there's a distinction between, choice from a standpoint of full vouchers. That's going to be a challenge in Maryland. I mean, we have a challenge just with public charters right now. There's a lot of pushback that we currently get from the teachers union. The teachers are not the problem, it's the teachers union that tends to be a problem, as well as some that just are not quite informed and don't necessarily have kids in the system. They're not the ones that have that challenge of having to send their kid to a troubled school. I give the example, and you mentioned I went to SC Law School. When I lived in California, our oldest son was in elementary school, and he was in, I think, the 5th grade, and at the time you still had junior high school that didn't start until the 7th, so we felt we had 2 years before we had to really get him to another school, because the local junior high school was terrible. I called it gang prep. Because the days of just being left alone in some schools are over. It's you're either a victim or a victimizer. You fall into one of those groups, or you run home every day. So all of a sudden they decided they're going to go to this middle school concept, which meant 6th grade he would have to go to the local school. So I called the school system, and this was right after California had a ballot initiative for choice. Total choice and vouchers. And the teachers union, in California, have the teachers union, they have principals union, and the janitors union. They all lined up against that. So it failed because of just the money. But I called the school system, the Unified School District, and I talked to a guy. I said, well, I want my son to get into the magnet school next year. And he gave me the usual back and forth of, we want all the schools to be as good as the magnet schools, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't have time for that. I said, I don't have time for you to do something that you haven't done in the last X amount of years. I said, but I have a choice. My wife and I have choices. Our choice is we can move, we can suck it up and send them to private school. I said, but my neighbors don't have that choice. Right. And that's what we are pushing when we talk about charter expansion, is to give parents choices that are stuck in areas where they
Right.
can't do what my wife and I could do, and that is move or possibly go to a private school.
What can the folks here in the audience that are from Maryland, what can they do to help work with you on some of these policy issues? Because everyone knows businessmen, they want to get involved
Right.
when there's tax credits and tax things, but on education, school
Right.
choice, how can they work with you?
There are 2 things that they can do. One is, well, maybe 3. Learn who your state legislators are, and then call them, and tell them where you stand on certain things. And then that's the second. The third thing is, don't send them money. Because if you're in Prince George's County or Montgomery County, they're all Democrats who are lining up against these things. So don't send them money. When they send you that invitation saying, come to my event, spend $100, come to my event, you call them and say, I'm not going because I looked at your voting record. Because they'll tell you anything when they're talking, they'll go to events and they'll talk about how they're pro-business and they're pro-this, they're pro-that, but then they vote on things that go against your interests. So you call them and you tell them that you're not going, and the reason that you're not going. Those are the things to do. But
Right.
first, find out who your senator and your delegates. In many cases, you'll have 2, maybe 3 delegates.
Right. Now, let's talk about a political issue, because I've talked with a lot of friends of mine there in Maryland, and they like, also, boy, Rutherford is a friend of yours. I said, yeah, I call him a friend. They're like, well, tell him this, tell him that, he ain't doing this. I'm like, number one, and I'm going to let you, number one, you all have only been in office, what, 8, 9 months, 10 months.
Yeah.
And so you can't turn around a big old tanker, in 9 or 10 months. You got to take your time. And so some folks are voicing their frustration to me that, well, the lieutenant governor, they're hiring a lot of Democrats. They're keeping Democrats in place. Number one, we have been out of office so long in Maryland over the big picture, big scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, number one, you got to go where the talent is, number one. And then number 2, you just can't do things like LBJ used to do things back in the old days and just say, boy, hire my daughter. I want her to have a job in your agency. You go to jail.
Right.
So just explain to the audience that you've only been in office a short time.
Yeah,
and
been
you
in
can't
office.
do everything.
It does take a while to sort through the system, first of all. Secondly, I mean, we wouldn't have been elected if it wasn't for Democrats. I mean, when you're 2 to 1 Republicans to Democrats, So there were Democrats who were there supporting us, and they were open and notorious in terms of their support. There are different people. There are people who support you, but they whisper, and then there are people who are open and notorious who come out and support you. So, and you're going to hire talent. So you want to get people who can do the job, but it does take time to go through the organizations, the different agencies, to find out who's who and who should be there and who shouldn't be there. Now, one of the things that former Governor Marvin Mandel did in Maryland was that if you're at a certain level, you serve at the pleasure of the governor. You're an at-will employee, basically. So if you're at a supervisory level or above, you are an at-will employee. And so as long as it doesn't violate public policy to get rid of a person, that public policy could be race, gender, ethnicity, or political purpose, you can let people go. And so as we find, like a purely a political hack, someone who was brought in by the previous guy who worked on all these campaigns and donated all this money, we know will never be with us and will stab us in the back in another year and a half, we just say thank you for your service. You'll be paid to the end of the pay period, and it's time to go.
Right, right. So,
no, most cases they resign on their own, but some do hang around.
sure, sure. Now, on the another political question, what can, again, this audience do? Again, these are mostly entrepreneurs. What can they do on the political side, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, to be helpful on the political side of the House with you and the governor?
Well, I mean, one, go get on our Facebook pages so you know what we're doing, because particularly if you're in the Washington area, the Washington media doesn't cover Maryland. I mean, other than a little bit in Prince George's, a little bit in Montgomery, they basically cover Virginia and they cover federal Washington and then a little bit of DC politics. But they don't really cover Maryland. So get on our Facebook pages and that'll tell you. You mentioned us being in office for 10 months. I would care to say, and I worked for Governor Ehrlich several years ago, we have done more in 10 months than any other governor has done, I think, in 4 years. We pushed through retirement benefits or reduced the retirement or taxes on retirement income for military retirees. We tried to eliminate that completely, but that was the first step. We were able to eliminate the rain tax, which everybody said we wouldn't eliminate the rain tax. We reduced tolls on all of our bridges and tunnels. The first time in 50 years that tolls have been reduced. You've never heard tolls across the country ever be reduced. We reduced tolls. We reduced fees, over 100 fees that the state was assessing on various things, 100 fees, including we were charging, we as the state. My wife said I shouldn't say we because it sounds like I was doing it, but I said no, we as the state were charging homeless people $25 for an ID. Now, I've been fortunate not to be homeless, but if I was, I wouldn't spend 25 bucks for a state ID. We were charging that. We were charging women who were trying to come to the state to get help getting child support from their deadbeat dads. We were charging them 100 bucks to get support from the state to go after their deadbeat dad. We should be charging the deadbeat dad or mom, whoever it is, instead of we're charging them to come and do it. So those things were reduced in that period of time. We closed the detention center in Baltimore City, which dates back to the Civil War, this place. That the ACLU was suing the state since the 1980s because of the conditions there. The legislature had a 10-year plan to close it. We closed it in 3 weeks. We sat in a meeting and said, why don't we close it? And our Secretary of Public Safety and Corrections said, I'll get back to you. And he came back within a week and said, we have a plan, we can get it done. Governor said, let's go.
Wow.
So, we've done a tremendous amount, and that's just some of the things we've been able to do with and without the legislature, and we'll keep going from there.
Okay. I'll ask you a political question, and then I know we got to get you out of here. Let's talk for a second about this whole issue of what, on a national level, then maybe make it relevant to your state of Maryland. What, in your view, needs to happen for us to get more blacks involved in the Republican Party? Because we got an election next year, and man, if we don't win this White House, I don't know what kind of country we're going to be living in.
Yeah, you know, it's a lot of it is getting out there and letting people know that it's okay to have the views that we have. And what we do, I mean, I mentioned a moment ago, in Maryland, you know, it's 2-1, Democrats to Republicans. One of the things, though, that you notice in Maryland and a lot of other places is that the independents have grown substantially. And you look at Prince George's County in particular, the registered independents has really shot up. And that's largely black Americans who said, I don't want to be saddled to the Democratic Party. Now, they still may be voting Democrat, because the Democratic Party does a very good job of playing to emotions.
Yep.
They play the old, you're going to be sent back to the plantation. They don't quite say it that way, even though Joe Biden, crazy Uncle Joe Biden, sat there and said he's going to put you in chains, and no one gave him grief about that. But, you know, generally they play that kind of thing, the Bull Connor and all that stuff, which were Democrats doing all that, but they play that game. Versus, you know, I tell people all the time, look, I chose to be a Republican. I chose to be active as a Republican. That's my decision. I just ask you to vote for the best person and get past all of that sideshow stuff that they throw at you of trying these fear tactics with you that, oh, you're going to be rolled back or, you know, go back. They always talk about this going back. Going back where?
Right.
You know, I was on Rock Newman's show the other day, and he was saying, he said, well, how do you address over 90% of blacks tend to vote Democrat in presidential elections? And my response to him was, and what has it gotten you?
Right.
What'd you get for it? Yeah. I mean, you know, for those numbers. Free cell phone. and government cheese. Yeah. You know, so it's like one side will take you for granted, and I know you've said that a lot of times in terms of you look at the president and what groups he met with first. You know, it was like 2 years before he meets with the black community, and then tells them to kick off their slippers.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
Kick off your house slippers. And it's like,
Yep. Stop complaining.
yeah. So, you know, it's one side takes you for granted because they know you're going to be there, and the other side doesn't think about you because they say we'll never get you.
Right.
So I tell people, you know, look at the candidates, look at what we're saying, you know, and don't get caught up in the sideshow. You're not going to agree with everything. I mean, we don't agree with our spouses on everything. In some cases, not, you know, almost everything we don't agree with. But, you know, and I've been married 28 years. You know, happily married, and to one woman.
Right.
One time. Yeah, one time. So, you know, but what happens is, you know, the wedge issues, they try to find that one issue to make you afraid, and then you know, say, okay, well, I don't really like Hillary, or I don't really like this person, but I'm going to vote for him because I'm afraid. I had a guy say something like that. Well, you know, I like what you got. When we were in the campaign, this guy, he said, and it was in Montgomery County, he said, you know, I like what you guys are talking about, and it's time we really need a change here. He said, but I just, you know, I just feel that I may vote for you, and this happens, all of a sudden we go back. I say, yeah, like I'm going to send you to the plantation. Is that what it is?
Right.
Maybe you'll have steady work.
Right.
But you know, it's that kind of thing. That, what are you afraid of? You vote for these other folks, and it doesn't do anything for you. So.
Right. Yeah. I think
that's right. You're supposed to tell the jokes.
Oh, wow. Now he remembers now, right? I mean, he's one of my better students, though. Okay. I forgot to ask at the top. Please give us an update on the governor. I saw him on the news yesterday as far as his health. I'm hearing good things.
He's doing very well. He got his report yesterday morning, his PET test, that he is cancer-free. He's in remission. So it's great. Yeah, he's doing very well. He feels better every day, and even, you know, before this test, he was, you know, saying to me how he feels better every day. That, you know, felt better, you know, the day before than he did this day, and going forward. So he went this morning out to the RGA meeting in Vegas. So he's out there now.
Oh, and you don't want to go with me next month for the presidential debate? And
somebody's got to run the shop.
No, but okay, when the governor comes back, then we go. I mean, heck, but anytime I'm around here, it's a gamble anyway. So, final question before I get you out of here is, I've talked with a lot of people. I think I'm your biggest PR person around the country because a lot of folks, I mean, they don't know we have a Republican administration in Maryland, number one.
That's shocking.
Yeah, exactly. Then they find out, wait a minute, we got a black lieutenant governor. I'm like, duh. I mean, I'm just dumbfounded that folks, and I'm talking about folks in the party leadership. So I ain't talking about Pook and LaQuisha though. I mean, they don't know you. So my question, several of them asked me, would you be willing to come to their states to give speeches and things? I know your primary focus here on Maryland. Are you open down the road to, you know, if different states and business groups want to have you come in and speak to them?
Yeah,
about
probably will, particularly now that the governor is feeling better. I may have more time.
Right.
There were a lot of things I was picking up because he was, you know, going through treatment. So we'll see. I mean, we decide what we want to do, but open to invitations.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, Lieutenant Governor, I am committed to, number one, doing everything I can since I live in the region to support you and the governor on policy and on the political side. And I'm encouraging all my buddies that are here, the business people especially, and we have a lot of educators here, we got to uplift, embrace, and lift him up. I mean, because I'm going to tell you, one thing I can say about Boyd, he's been black most of his life. And
my birth certificate in D.C. says colored, so.
Oh, wow. I was going to make a joke about that, but I didn't know if it would be too unpolitically correct.
I still have a copy of the original.
Really?
Yeah, it says child of colored parents.
Can you give me a copy so I can get it to Donald Trump?
It's probably. Then he'll be the best for the colored people. I'll be the best for the colored people. Right.
That's funny. Wow, yeah, I'd love to see that. Colored, wow, wow. But my point being, Boyd and I in Virginia, he in Maryland, he was out there in the trenches in the Republican Party when it wasn't cool to be a Republican.
Well, Lewis Pope there was my county chair when I was on the Central Committee in Howard County with Lewis.
Well, well, you know what I'm talking about then, Lewis. I mean, and so Boyd is one of the most decent people you'll ever want to meet. And to me, I don't want you all to walk away from here and say, oh, the Lieutenant Governor gave some great remarks. I got to know a little bit about his background and all that stuff. My whole point is I want you to walk away thinking, okay, what can I do to be helpful to him and the governor on policy? If you are an entrepreneur, what is it that you need to hear from the state that's going to get you to either open up an additional office in Maryland, Larry, or to move back into Maryland if they make it worth your while because you're a good businesswoman. So again, I want you to walk away thinking how you can be helpful. If you all walk away just saying, hey, you had a great time, you met some good people, you saw the Lieutenant Governor, then I think I've wasted your time. But if when you leave here, you're thinking in terms of how can I continue to help a good brother like the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, then I think we've done something very good, and hopefully we can replicate this across the country as an organization, and that's what we're committed to, is going across the country, doing meetings like this with key political leaders like this, find out how we can help and help nurture and grow the black entrepreneurs across the country. Because if we do that, as you know, we don't even have to talk politics. If you're helping businesses thrive and flourish, you don't have to tell them to vote for you. It would be in their natural best interest.
Right, should be.
And so, all right, closing thoughts, and I'm going to get you out of here because it's about 1 o'clock and we can get you on the highway.
All right, well, no, thank you. Thanks for the offer to come down here. You talked about it a while ago, and we got a date, so I'm glad to be here.
An appointment to do this, not a date, because he's in Maryland. People may interpret that differently.
Right. It's legal now.
Right, exactly.
It's legal now, right.
That's why we had to clarify that we're not dating, we're buddies, and we got an appointment.
Right. I think he's got some issues there. That's right.
So, last comments.
Well, you know, we are still working hard. We got a lot to do in Maryland. It does take time to turn the ship of state, but it's moving in the right direction. A number of efforts that we've taken on both from the business side, but also, you know, the social side. I didn't mention that one of the first executive orders that the governor signed when we took office was set up the Heroin and Opiate Emergency Task Force. You know, there's a big problem. When we were in the campaign last year, we were talking about the heroin problem. The other side didn't say a word about it. They were not saying anything. And we talked about it because when we went, it didn't matter where we were, if we were in Baltimore City, if we were out on the Eastern Shore, small little Caroline County, or in Western Maryland, the sheriffs, the local health officials were all saying heroin was their big issue. And we have a report that'll be coming out in December in terms of what strategies and recommendations we're going to have to try to address this issue. And it's affecting so many people. And it starts with the prescription medicines. These oxycodones, the Oxycontin, those things that people are getting addicted to that and then turning to heroin. So I know I'm leaving on a depressing note, but just wanted to point that out as well, as that's something that we're tackling.
Yeah, well, let me know what we could do on that tip if for example, maybe I can convince even someone like Bria Marie, especially any teenagers caught up in this stuff, sometimes maybe having her come by and just talk with folks who got in trouble. Maybe we can do that. And I don't know if you know Gerard Mustav.
No.
Gerard, step over here. The tallest dude in the room.
Oh, okay.
Played in the NBA, but he works with a lot with juveniles who've got in trouble, help clean up their lives and stuff. So
Good.
definitely, I want to get you together with him sometime.
Okay.
And we
Well,
got
thank you.
Jack. Where's Jack? Is somewhere over here. Jack. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna take about a 2-minute break. Don't leave the room. We're gonna do the focus group, but I got to get the Lieutenant Governor back on the highway. So thank him again for coming out.
Thank you, Raynard.
Appreciate it, my man.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Let's get a picture. Hey, Bree, we get a picture with. Now, did she give you one of her CDs?
Yes, it's at the